Okay, so now let's create the new job inside Jenkins. There are different options. My favorite one is the multi-branch pipeline. The cool advantage about multi-branch pipelines is you basically create the Jenkins file that you've seen here, and this will be put inside the repository, so all the developers can basically change the way stuff is being built. Let's say you are working on some branch and you need a slightly different build process, for example, to listen on another port or something like that. You could just change it in here, push to that branch, and have that branch executed a little bit different than the master branch. But yeah, this gives a lot of power to the developers. So I really like that way. And there are normal pipelines and multi-branch pipelines. So a normal pipeline does not have any way of you differentiating between the branches, but the multi-branch pipeline does. So that's usually what I go for. So I'll just be calling it node example, select the multi-branch pipeline and click OK. So now we are just going to add a source where we are going to pull the code from, and I will be inputting https github.com/node example. You have basically two options here. You can either input the HTTPS address or you can input the SSH address. So SSH address would be something like this. But if you input the SSH address, it would try to use SSH keys for authenticating. And since this project is owned by me, but public to everybody, you guys won't be able to pull over SSH. So everybody can just use the HTTPS for now, and later on we'll go into how to set up private repositories. But yeah, we can leave the defaults pretty much to how they are right now and click on save. And that will then start a multi-branch pipeline scan. So it will download a copy of the repository, then look what branches we have and see if there is any branch that contains a Jenkins file. And if it finds a Jenkins file, it's then going to start building it. So let's click on scan multi-branch pipeline. It says it's scheduled a build for one branch. Let's see. Yeah, so if we go here, we have the master branch, and there is one build which failed. But I expected that. Okay, so if we take a look here, it's now erroring me the example password. And if we look here, we can also see no credentials specified. That is because in here, I am referencing basically example password 1. So we can fix that by going to the core of Jenkins. Then we go to credentials. And in here, this is really tricky to find. You need to move your mouse over here, then go to this little arrow and click on add credentials. And then we have the option to enter different kind of credentials. So I just need to specify a password. So all I need to do is to select a secret text. And the secret text will be, this is my top secret password. And as an ID, I am going to name it example password 1. So then later on, Jenkins knows, okay, if I call it by this ID, I have to give out that password. Okay, so once that is done, we can go back to the project and start another build, which is most likely going to fail as well, but due to a different reason this time. Okay, you can see it now exited here with npm not found. That means that the Docker container we have does not have a Node.js or npm version installed. So if we run this docker exec command with the minus IT flag, you can create a connection to your container. if we specify the root user, we will basically end up as a root user and have a bash shell. And then we can basically download a version of Node, nodesource.com, and I'll be picking version number 12. And then we just pipe that over to bash and install it. Okay, so inside the container, we now have a new file called nodesource.list. And in here, we now have a link. So whenever we run an upget update or upget upgrade, we will get the last Node version updates. And now we can basically install Node.js. And now we have Node.js version 12.15 and npm 6.13. So we go back to Jenkins, back to the master branch, and we trigger a third build. And this time we are not getting any error. It's running the npm install. And afterwards, it will run the start or restart in the environment. And here you can see the list of the processes. As I've mentioned earlier, I'm going to just run one instance of it. So now we should be up and running. And if we take a look into our ecosystem config, into the production setting, we started up on port 12345. So now we should be able to go to port 12345 and have our application up and running. You can see that we are now running in the production environment, and we have the password. This is my top secret password, which we entered here in the credential store. So an interesting thing about these credentials is, for example, if I go here and click on update, and I want to set a new password. So basically I am going to set a new password. You then might think, if we go to the master and build now, that it would then display a new password. Hold on, let me wait for it to finish. So now you can basically see application action restarted. So it restarted the process. It's now up and running for 0 seconds. So now we expect it to show a new password, but this is not true. So this is because the process PM2 is being started with different environmental variables, and PM2 then starts up the node project. When we run the PM2 restart, PM2 isn't being restarted itself, but just the node process is being restarted. A workaround this is to go to the Jenkins file, and in here I added a line, and this line is basically going to kill our actual PM2 process for the node application app and then restart it. And that, in case, will then reload the environmental variables and should update all the fields. So let's test that. Okay, so we now pushed the changes. We can go back to the master branch and trigger another build. And this time you can see it actually kills the old stuff, so the whole PM2, and then it's spawning a completely new process. And if we then go back to the port, we now see the new password. So I switched it over to set a new password, but this is basically how you would have to change the Jenkins file in order to actually restart it. You could just leave it in here, but I am going to uncomment it again as a default. So when you guys run it for the first time, it will be the same as in the video. Okay, so now that we got that, you might be wondering how to automate the whole process. A lot of people know about GitHub webhooks. So that is a system where you push code to GitHub and GitHub then runs a URL on your system. The disadvantage for most developers, I think, is that they would actually have to expose Jenkins to the internet, which then would result them in regularly updating the systems, which is not always the best choice. So we are going to bypass that, and I will show you another way. So if we go into the configure section, we can go here, and there is the scan multi-branch pipeline triggers section. And we can basically set the project to check every minute if there are any new changes that have been pushed. So let's change that. And afterwards, it's going to immediately start rescanning it. And it should now find our last change that we made by me basically resetting that change. And it will trigger another build, which then restarts it without killing it because we uncommented the kill part. Okay, I guess that is a good start to Jenkins. If you have any questions, let me know in the comments.